In Racing Through Time, we look at the cars, the drivers, the races and the circuits that made motorsport history. While the same principles will always apply in racing, some things have changed dramatically over the past 110 years. The circuits, the cars, race formats and the technology evolved from the horse and cart age to the space age. One thing that remains exactly the same is that first past the checkered flag wins. Except, that is, where there are protests, scrutineering problems and official inquiries. There's always been room for a good argument between the competitive people who make up the world of Grand Prix racing. On Racing Through Time, we look back and compare Grand Prix racing then and now. Racing started with the great city-to-city races, like the Paris to Rouen of 1894. The Gordon Bennett races were held between cars representing countries and ran from 1898 to 1906 and were the birth of international competition. Edwardian racers faced dust and rough roads perched high on their cars. Their low-revving cars were reliable but vulnerable to punctures in races that lasted 10 hours or more. After the disastrous 1903 Paris to Bordeaux to Madrid race was abandoned when drivers and spectators died, organisers decided to run races on closed public roads. They still covered great distances compared to today's races, but the idea of a circuit or a lap came into being. In 1906, the Automobile Club of France decided to hold a Grand Prix, open to all comers. This was held at Le Mans. Not on the track used for the famous 24-hour race, but a longer one nearby. France was the cradle of motor racing. By the 1910s, engines became smaller as designers realised that rather than building bigger and bigger engines, a better way was to extract more power from smaller ones. In England, racing was banned on the public roads, so the world's first purpose-built racetrack, Brooklands, was constructed in 1907. This banked oval track inspired Indianapolis, Montlhéry, Monza and many others that followed. The great pre-war Grand Prix showcased the increasing battle between German and French manufacturers. After the First World War of 1914-1918, racing cars became smaller with higher revving engines. Italy with Fiat, Alfa Romeo and Maserati, and France with Bugatti and Delage were building fast sporting cars. These were peak years, with Fiat setting the standard, followed by Alfa when Fiat pulled out. The 1920s introduced the modern sports car, and the tracks became smoother and the races more regulated. Next came a series of Grand Prix with a calendar emerging, as races in Italy, Germany and the street race at Monaco became annual events. The 1930s saw the birth of professional racing and the rise of factory teams. The powerful Mercedes was front-engined and well-balanced, the Auto Union mid-engined and tail-happy. Long power slides were the order of the day, as the power of the cars was more than the narrow tyres could handle. Part of the skill was not to wear the tyres out. Racing colours were green for the United Kingdom, red for Italy, blue for France, yellow for Belgium, white for Germany, and white with blue stripes for the USA. These remained the basic colours in Formula One until 1969, when advertising on cars was permitted and Lotus appeared with the gold leaf, red and gold cars. Most teams supported their Formula One activities by building road cars or producing racing cars for sale. Opinions on drivers remained as long as there was someone to argue their case. But as they recede into the history books, names like Felice Nazzaro become just that, names. Heroes of the 20s, Antonio Ascari and Robert Benoit, are fading too. The legendary Tazio Nuvolari retains his place in the pantheon of great drivers and popular imagination. He was a legendary figure who competed over a long period, with stirring drives in Grand Prix, the Mille Miglia and the Targa Florio. Nuvolari was the epitome of the racing driver. Idolised in Italy and round the racing world, he developed the four-wheel drift, throwing cars into corners and sliding, balancing between tyre grip and power. Nuvolari's fame endures to this day, Audi naming a concept car after him. As reporting, photography and filming of races improved and the circuits became more established, the fame of the drivers grew and their exploits were recorded. So Stirling Moss recalls the drivers of his era, the 1950s.
I've always believed Fangio was the greatest driver that there's ever been. I still think that. I think there've been quite a few people that have come very close. Being close and being on the top are two different things. I think Jimmy Clark, for instance, was a fantastic driver. I didn't see that much of Jimmy because he really was ascending when I got out, and there've been a lot of other people since. But I think I can best explain the difference between Fangio and Ascari was very, very small. I mean, you're not talking of a big difference. But I remember my car, I think, had broken at Bari or somewhere like that, and I was watching the cars, and Ascari would come round and he'd just touch the straw bale, just nudge it, and every time he'd do the same thing. Fantastic. Fangio would come past, and he wouldn't quite touch; he'd just touch the whiskers, and still he was just as quick. And I thought the precision of the man, the balance of the car, and the tenacity, the timing, the way he keep going at the same speed for so long, like a drip, like a water dripping. Was the way was, I think, a lot of his strength, and he was very composed, a nice driver to watch. As of course was Farina. Farina was a much harder driver. I don't mean necessarily hard on the car, but much tougher to drive against. Fangio was a gentleman. I don't mean he'd say take the corner or anything like that, but whatever he did was extremely ethical. Now, Nino Farina wasn't quite as easy as that. I mean, he's a bit rougher. And Ascari, no, much more in the Fangio mould, but and a nice person. But I think just that whisker away from being with Fangio and you know, the odd fifth here and there, it makes a difference. And I think that's what tells the difference between one driver and another.
Jackie Stewart, Niki Lauda, Nelson Piquet, Ayrton Senna, Alain Prost and Michael Schumacher have been recognised as the leading drivers of the past 30 years. What makes a great driver? The number of races and championships they won, or the excitement and passion that they showed? In a sport that is so driven by facts and figures, that's the one subjective area that remains. Stirling Moss compares driving techniques of the 1950s with today.
In modern days, I think it's closed up a lot because of the enormous adhesion of the tyre. I think that because you've now got lateral G up to 3 or 4, in my day it was probably around 0.8 or 9, I think when it's much lower, the driver has much more input, if you like, than he's able to show now. Not because he was greater necessarily then, but I think that the way the picture he could paint was much freer for him. It's a totally different sport. I mean, I can remember the time when brakes were so bad that if you put the brakes on really hard, you had to wait until they cooled off. I mean, seriously, it was really quite a big bad thing with drum brakes, even the better ones. And then we used to get things like fading dampers, so that the damping wasn't as good, and so the car's road holding would go off, and you had to contour the tyres down, and all sorts of different things we had to face, which of course they don't face now. They have a lot of other problems. So although the sport is different, What you're trying to do is the same thing. You're trying to take a car that is designed to do something and make it do more than I won't say more than it's designed to do, but more than one would expect it to do. You are driving on the limit, and motor racing is 10/10ths. And to do 10/10ths in any year is exactly the same as any other year, except the ground rules have changed a bit, but it's still the same thing.
The road to Formula One can be unpredictable, costly, or plain lucky. The established path taken by Ralph Furman to Formula One was via karting, Formula Ford, Formula Vauxhall Lotus, Formula 3, and to Japan in Formula Nippon. Having the Van Diemen Formula Ford factory in the family didn't hurt, but it was a long apprenticeship for the 27-year-old. He was helped by winning the Autosport Award, which had a cheque for £20,000 and, just as importantly, a test in a Formula One car. Others have jumped straight in, like Jos Verstappen and Kimi Räikkönen. One stellar season in a lower category and then into Formula One. Of course, many drivers show stunning speed in lower categories but can't adapt to being beaten once they make it to the Premier category. Stirling Moss's family supported him to such an extent that to help him secure a drive with Mercedes, the best team in 1954 and 55, they bought a Maserati 250F so he could show his skills at the highest level. That paid off, but the car cost £10,000 after taxes were included. How do you make it up the ladder of chance that is Formula One? By either being so wealthy you can buy your way into a team, like Pedro Diniz, by having talent and enough financial backing to earn a place, like Mark Webber, or by being one of the few drivers who are actually paid to go racing. When Jordan was looking for a driver to replace the jailed Bertrand Gachot at Spa in 1991, Mercedes offered their junior sports car driver, one Michael Schumacher, on the basis that he knew the track. They contributed $250,000 to Jordan. Even though he didn't actually know the track, Schumacher qualified 7th and showed race form. Almost immediately, he was spirited off to Benetton and double World Championship success. In earlier days, a driver's death was one way to progress in the sport. Sadly, the most recent example was David Coulthard's promotion from Williams test driver when Ayrton Senna died in 1994. If the team thinks it's their car that is the main reason for victories and not the driver, then they often have no hesitation in parting company with him. Damon Hill won the 1996 World Championship for Williams, but took the number 1 to Arrows in 1997. Engineering drivers like Jack Brabham and Bruce McLaren appear to be a breed of the past. Now, a driver's work usually involves PR appearances for the team, testing and counting their money. Being multilingual certainly helps. Michael Schumacher speaks 4 languages. Having a good manager is essential. In the early 1950s, Stirling Moss had a commercial manager in Ken Gregory, who helped negotiate his endorsement contracts. Willy Weber has looked after the Schumacher brothers since their careers began, and is himself reportedly one of the biggest earners in Formula One as a result. These days, drivers are prevented from competing in any other racing for commercial and safety reasons. In the 1950s and 60s, Grand Prix drivers usually combined a sports car program with any drives that they could find in touring and GT cars. A small retainer, appearance money and prize money was the source of their income. The top drivers were in demand, and racing each weekend increased their visibility. In his prime, Stirling Moss reckoned on earning as much as a surgeon each year. The wage escalation increased with Scotsmen Jim Clark and Jackie Stewart, drivers who knew their worth. That eventually led to today's highest earner, Michael Schumacher, who reportedly earns $100 million a year from Ferrari and his personal sponsors. Safety is one obvious area where major changes have occurred as the cars got faster. In the 1950s, there were no roll bars or seat belts. The conventional wisdom of the time was that you were better to be thrown clear of the car rather than strapped in and possibly caught in a fire. With the low-line 1960s cars, with the driver lying down between fuel tanks, it wasn't possible to leap out of the car anymore. Combined with flimsy rollover bars, a lack of seatbelts and lightweight cars, it was an extraordinarily dangerous era, and many drivers died. Fire was an ever-present danger until the development of non-puncturable bag tanks. For many early drivers, head protection was non-existent. A linen skull cap keeping the hair out of your eyes, but nothing more. Some drivers wore cork-based helmets from the 1920s onwards, like Sir Henry Birkin, seen here at Brooklands. Helmets only became compulsory in Grand Prix racing in 1952. Current helmets are made of super light and yet extremely strong composite materials. Drivers sometimes wore open neck shirts and trousers on hot days. The modern-day racing suit is made from Nomex, which is fire-resistant. Drivers wear fireproof gloves, balaclavas, underwear and boots. Legends of the past like Alberto Ascari, Fangio and especially Froilan Gonzalez, the Pampas Bull, would have no chance of fitting inside a current Formula One car. However, they needed strength and stamina to drive front-engine cars, which were far hotter than today's cars, and the races were longer too. Why is driver fitness so important? The answer is that the driver must maintain concentration right up to the end of the race, rather than finish in an exhausted state where mistakes could be made. Fitness testing includes hand-to-eye coordination, strength, balance, reaction times, and measuring lean body mass. Critical decisions need to be made, and if you're not fit enough or aware of the situation, then split seconds can be lost. Drivers new to Formula One who have only competed in 1-hour Formula 3 races or haven't been able to complete thousands of kilometers in testing soon find out how physically demanding and mentally draining a 2-hour race can be. These days, drivers keep themselves in shape, assisted by a team of doctors, dietitians and trainers to withstand the huge strains imposed by modern cars.
This is an important exercise for the pectoral.
Apart from gym work and running, cycling seems to be the choice for drivers. Low impact, but increasing aerobic capacity. If the team spends millions of dollars trying to get every last fraction of a second out of the car, then the driver is just as responsible to make sure that they are in the best possible condition to tackle the race.
Is more important. It's better for the
stresses on the driver's neck are the high G-forces. Training in different conditions, like the humidity experienced in Malaysia, helps prepare drivers for all circumstances. Body fat can be measured by the electrical resistance of the skin. The composition of lean body mass, muscle and fluid in the body can be measured, assessed, and a fitness regime tailored to suit. Racing may have lost some romantic notions of the past, like Akil Varzi lapping Monaco while smoking a cigar, or Mike Hawthorne wearing a bow tie, but that's the price of changing from a sport into a business. When driving became a full-time occupation and the commercial side of the sport grew, there was less time for the playboy image.
Let's see if there's any performance in it.
Formula One designers replaced their drawing boards in the late 1980s and now use CAD/CAM computer programs to design Formula One components. But designs are completed now on the screen in the interest of saving time in getting a new car or parts onto the track as fast as possible. CAD/CAM stands for Computer Aided Design, Computer Aided Manufacture. Instead of drawing the part on paper in 2 dimensions, the designer enters coordinates into a computer. This produces a 3-dimensional model on screen. Changes to the part's dimensions can be made quickly, and the computer adjusts all the related parts accordingly. This system allows multiple users to design separate components concurrently. This is a huge advantage for a design team with thousands of components making up each car. Once the designers are satisfied with the component design, special CNC milling machines can call up the design data and use it to automatically cut an epoxy resin block into the exact shape of the component. This shaped resin block is then used to make a mold. The composite shop uses this mold to produce the finished product. The modern Formula One car relies heavily on the use of composite materials, the most common of which is carbon fiber. Advanced composites have many advantages over metals. They are strong and can have 15 times the strength of steel, while also being very light. This fabric actually contains a mixture of resin and fiber. It's trimmed to size and then shaped over a mold. A number of layers are used on a single component. The layers are placed on top of each other in different directions. The component is vacuum sealed in a bag and baked at high temperature in an autoclave. The material then sets hard in the shape of the component being produced. The reusable mold is then removed and the component is trimmed and cleaned. Carbon fiber is used in many components of a Formula One car, including the chassis tub, suspension parts, brakes, body, and even the steering wheel. Until the 1980s, metalworking skills were the main requirement in building a racing car. The Cooper factory in Surbiton was home to the company that built many 500cc racing cars and progressed to Formula 2, sports cars, and eventually won 2 world championships. Cooper was typical of the small-scale operations set up in many garages and factories. Bigger continental firms like Ferrari, Alfa and Maserati had established production lines. Bruce McLaren learned his skills at Cooper. Following Jack Brabham's example, McLaren set up his own team to first build sports cars and then Grand Prix races. This cramped factory in Woking was the genesis of today's massive McLaren empire. The British racing industry progressed in the 1960s for a number of reasons. One was the proliferation of teams in the UK and the influx of Commonwealth drivers and mechanics who were prepared to work all hours of the day and night. As the UK aerospace industry was wound back, talented designers and technicians became available and were drawn to motor racing. Turning the clock ahead 35 years takes us to Toyota's impressive state-of-the-art buildings in Cologne, Germany. Now racing cars are built in surgically clean conditions with massive backup staff. Toyota's Formula One project has cost $1 billion and employs 550. All this to build just 4 cars each season. Toyota has built 300 engines and has 40 either in cars or on the dyno. The wind tunnel runs 24 hours a day. It's capable of using 50% scale models, providing accurate results for the all-important aerodynamic development. It cost $125 million, part of the massive investment. They have overcome their isolation from the UK's motorsport industry with all the skilled staff and knowledge available there. Aerodynamic efficiency is probably the most important single aspect of a modern Grand Prix car. This black art centres on how air flows over, around and under the car. From the late 1970s, when Lotus developed the ground effect cars, designers, drivers and engineers have been chasing the ultimate aero package. Designers test countless models in wind tunnels before producing the real car, while drivers and engineers constantly adjust components to achieve the best package on the track. The first car with wings to generate downforce appeared in 1959 at the Nürburgring, when the May brothers presented their Porsche. They weren't allowed to start the race. Jim Hall's Chaparral followed in 1967 with a substantial rear wing on the 2E. In the era of low-powered 1.5-litre Grand Prix racing from 1961 to 65, the cars were designed to be as sleek and as wind-cheating as possible. It took until 1968 for Grand Prix teams to get on the bandwagon, but the wings they introduced were flimsy in comparison and often broke off with disastrous results. Double wings appeared and the cars looked like biplanes. After a serious crash at the Spanish Grand Prix in 1969, the governing body, the CSI, decided for the Monaco Grand Prix onwards that high wings were banned. So began the search for downforce and the increasing importance of aerodynamics. Peter Wright had developed the principles of ground effect while he was at BRM in the late 1960s. When he joined Lotus in the 70s, Colin Chapman gave him the go-ahead to further develop his ideas. By excluding air from the sides of the car and shaping the underside appropriately, the whole vehicle became a wing. The Lotus 78 and 79 pioneered this and helped Mario Andretti to the 1978 world title. However, to slow Formula One cars and make them safer, current regulations have tried to limit ground effects by restricting designers to a flat undertray and also requiring them to use planks to ensure that the car has a minimum specified ground clearance. While downforce is important, particularly for a car to corner at high speeds, it's also important to make the car as efficient through the air as possible. But straight line speed, often the trade-off for maximum aerodynamic grip, isn't as important as in-corner speed on tracks with short straights. It's claimed that Formula One cars generate so much downforce that they could drive upside down in a tunnel. We've yet to see a driver and team volunteer to demonstrate this. The problem is that the more downforce a wing creates, the more drag it generates. The balance between downforce and drag is vital to a Grand Prix car and varies immensely from circuit to circuit. Naturally, a critical part of any racing car is the engine. These days, the engine is part of the complete package. For Enzo Ferrari, the engine came first and the chassis was of secondary importance. In earlier days, when speeds through corners was slower, a powerful engine could make up any time lost through poor handling. Grand Prix racing has had numerous engine regulations over the years. The 1934 Formula had a minimum weight, so Mercedes and Auto Union built immensely powerful engines. In 1938, 3 litres supercharged was the limit. Post-war, Voiturette regulations were adopted, 1.5 litre supercharged or 4.5 litre unsupercharged. In 1952 and 53, the Formula 2 cars with 2 litre engines became the Grand Prix Formula. From 1954 to 1960, 2.5 litre unsupercharged engines, more in line with production cars of the time, were used. 1961 to 65 was the unloved 1.5 litre era. 1966 onwards allowed 3 litre or 1.5 litre forced induction, which is how Renault came to introduce their turbo engine in 1977. Turbos were dropped in 1989 and 3.5 litre engines were mandatory. Current rules specify that the engine must be of V10 configuration and must not exceed 3 litres in capacity. In recent years, Honda have supplied engines to 2 teams, BAR and Jordan. From Japan, where the engines are built, to England, where they're installed and maintained, is a big logistical exercise. They first entered Grand Prix racing in the 1960s and won the final race of the 1.5 litre formula, the 1965 Mexican Grand Prix. They joined with John Surtees and won the Italian Grand Prix in 1967. Concentrating on engines, Honda were the dominant make from the mid-1980s to the early 1990s, with Williams and then McLaren. And why do they go racing? Honda found that it's the best way to challenge and motivate their young designers and engineers to be adaptable and react to problems. The lessons learned will later be applied to designing Honda's road cars. And the excitement of an F1 program inspires the whole company. This time around, though, Honda is still looking for success. Producing an engine is a complicated and expensive process, but the Grand Prix environment is an ideal testbed for new technology which will eventually flow down to road cars. These days, engineers rely on computer-aided design software to test components virtually before it even exists. Once a new design has been agreed, computer-controlled milling machines create the new parts to tolerances of a fraction of a millimetre. But there's still a call for skilled craftsmen who can picture the ebb and flow of superheated gas and hand-shape the channels through which it travels. Once the parts are assembled, rigorous testing on an engine dynamometer is required to measure power and test reliability. Engines are run through cycles of testing which attempt to recreate the strains of individual racetracks. From the data collected at each track, engineers are able to recreate exactly the periods of full throttle, gear changes up and down, and even the air temperature in which the engines might need to operate. Glowing red hot, exhausts spit flame at every simulated gear change. Testbed data is collected too. If anything fails, technicians will be able to analyse what went wrong. That peak was 13,433 RPM, not particularly high revving by modern Formula One standards. The BMW engines in the Williams cars of Montoya and Ralf Schumacher rev to over 19,000. Once the tests are done, improvements are made. Here, inlet flows are analysed. When the engine is optimised, it's rebuilt with new parts and sent off to the team's headquarters in Britain. Formula One is truly international. Parts, cars and components travel around the world every day. Jordan Grand Prix headquarters are a few hundred yards from Silverstone, home of the British Grand Prix. The BAR team's headquarters is near Brackley, just down the road from Silverstone. The team was formed in 1997 and bought out the established Tyrrell team, which won the World Championship in the 1970s but had faded from prominence. Some teams have long-standing relationships with engine suppliers, and others change their partners after just a couple of years, such is the fast pace of the business of Formula One. Maintain a Formula One racing department subsidiary in the UK. They receive engines from Japan and look after rebuilding them when components have reached the ends of their service life. Final measurements and checks are also carried out to make sure that the car designer's requirements are met. Each team may have slightly different needs depending on how various components are placed under the tightly packed skin of a Formula One car. The Honda Racing Development Division operates as a partner to both teams, but has to ensure that no confidential information is accidentally passed from one to the other. Kazutoshi Nishizawa, Technical Director of HRD.
HRD is Honda's base and carry out the race and the test program. We have about 40 full-time employees at HRD. And during the season, we also have a number of extra staff from Japan working on the race and the test teams and on engine rebuilding and maintenance. We constantly feedback to Japan the race and test data and the comments from the drivers for R&D to use in the development of the engine.
Those components that do get reused are extensively tested before going back out on a rebuilt unit. These big rigs aren't just transport. They're fully equipped racing workshops and rolling spare parts stores, packed with complete engines, millions of pounds worth of parts and components, and banks of data recording computers. The rigs go to every race and test session around continental Europe with the teams, so technicians can monitor data from the cars. HRD also has race engineers and technicians attached to each team, but the internal secrets of the engines are known only to Honda personnel. They deliver sealed units to Jordan and BAR team headquarters, where the cars are designed and built, more or less around the Honda engine. The engines have to stand up to the rigours of competition, and they operate under enormous stress. F1 power units can rev to around 19,000 RPM. That's over double the revs of an average road car can achieve before it reaches the self-destruct stage. They also produce a massive 850 horsepower, which is around 4 or 5 times the power output of the normal family car. Couple that sort of power with a chassis which only weighs 600 kilograms, including a driver, and you can quickly see why a Formula One car is so fast. However, it's not only power and reliability that an engine maker has to think about. Every aspect of a Formula One car must be working towards three important factors: reducing weight, improving weight distribution, and increasing the aerodynamic effectiveness of the car. The weight reduction part of the equation is obvious, but how can an engine help with weight distribution and aerodynamics? All F1 designers are trying to achieve the lowest centre of gravity possible. In other words, if you can get the weight lower down in the car, you will produce a better balanced machine. The engine has to play a part in this as well. The lower down in the engine you can place the crankshaft, the lower down the overall weight of the engine will be. At the team factories, some components are added to the engine which are unique to the car the team has designed and built. The job of assembling and later removing a Formula One engine is handled by the engine kitter. In Jordan's case, that's Ian Marchant.
This engine I'm working on now is Jarno Trulli's engine, which did the race. So we'll de-kit it, take all our stuff off of it. As you can see, it's more than just a V10. There's a lot of Jordan stuff that goes on it that we fit. So we've got to take all that off, box it up and send it back to HRD. Normally I'll do it in the morning or an afternoon. Trucks normally get back on a Tuesday lunchtime, and then by Tuesday evening we'll have them boxed up. I'm on the way back to Honda. But sometimes we have a T-car engine to do as well, which is obviously makes 3, which makes it a bit tight, but you can just about do it.
Notwithstanding any dramas, there's an orderly routine to the Formula One maintenance process between races, which includes tasks like cleaning out the radiators.
We have a lot of servicing of radiators to do. It's obviously during the sort of 2 hours or so that they race around. If they're stuck in traffic or behind other cars, there's a hell of a lot of rubber shredded off from the cars in front. Just usual, generally like that after every race. But we will pressure wash all these and clean that up. That'll be okay. You know, they've got a 4,000 kilometre life expectancy on them, so obviously if we don't get enough air into the radiators, it becomes hot very quickly, and we don't have a viscous fan like you would do on a road car, so we can't sort of just add extra cooling to it. It basically relies on the car moving, and if it stands still for too long, it could be a big problem for us.
With the massive costs involved in running a Formula One car, testing is made as efficient as possible, but the Honda and team technicians will spend many hours together over the course of a year.
Their culture is actually very good, and it's helped us. They're very disciplined people, very methodical people, and they're just stage by stage. They have their long-term plan and they're just working away at it.
But by having people around who look at things differently, you'd learn more and progress more quickly. A lot of us here have worked with Japanese people for more than 10 years, Champ Car projects and various things, and some of the guys here actually on the Honda project I've worked with on Champ Car since the mid-90s, know them very well, and they know racing very well. Racing is in Honda's blood.
Do the European technicians learn anything cultural from their Japanese colleagues?
We do, yeah. Not necessarily good words, but they find it quite amusing. They all speak pretty good English, actually. It's strange because within Jordan we've got quite a few nationalities, so we're a sort of multi-national team, really, with English, Irish, and Japanese. So their food is a little bit different to ours, so I don't think any of the lads have ever got their heads around the Japanese cuisine yet.
The business of Formula One is about racing and about winning, something that Honda hasn't done much of lately. But Honda's racing involvement also extends to American Champ Cars and its many motorcycle activities. While engine rules are tight, the angle of the V for the piston banks is an area which can vary dramatically between engine makers. Some, like Mercedes-Benz, use a conventional 72-degree angle, while others, like Ferrari, go for a 90-degree layout. However, the radical Renault design had a wide 111-degree angle in an attempt to achieve a lower centre of gravity. In the past, Ferrari had success with the widest V-angle, the flat 12 in their 312 car. And how many of these million-dollar engines did Honda have to build to keep both teams provided with fresh power?
We have 3 cars at the race. Only 2 cars can be used on a Friday, so Friday evening we would change 2 engines. So for the first day we have 3 engines in the cars. Second day is 2 fresh engines in the race cars, so that puts it to 5. And then for the final day is fresh engines again. So during the weekend we will actually use a minimum of 8 engines. Honda have 2 or 3 spare engines for each day available as well. The same cycle happens with the testing. I mean, an engine normally is in a test just for 1 day.
Test team and race team do similar things. Obviously, a week out of sync, a week before a race meeting, so that's almost forced upon us, that schedule, that turnaround. But apart from that, we run older parts on the test cars to prove them. We put the new parts on the race cars, so the race cars are a bit fresher generally. And the test cars do more miles. We only run for about 2 hours a day at a race meeting, whereas on a test you can run for 6 hours a day.
I'm not quite sure what the life of this one is, but sometimes ex-race engines will do another race's Friday practice session. It may be a couple of races away before we see this one again, unless they've got some sort of development work to do on it. You sort of sit here, and although you work on the engines all day long, we don't actually get involved in what's inside that engine. So you sort of see the numbers, and you see them come round again. You see, like, number 1 we had in Melbourne, and it's cropped up again a couple of times. You think, oh, hello, seen that again. And there might be a subtle change on the outside that we can see, but it might be a big change on the inside. We're not sure yet, because obviously it's a sealed unit that Honda deal with. But they do come round again. They do get used again. I think the life of them is about 400 kilometres, so they'll do just over 300 in a race. And that'll be probably, I should think this one will be stripped again more likely, because it did do the full distance at Magny-Cours. And rebuild it again, check it over, or even throw it away. Who knows?
This extravagance should be a thing of the past when rules aimed at reducing the number and cost of engines are introduced. It's no longer possible to change engines between qualifying and the race, and in coming years, engines will have to last for 6 races. This is a radical rule change intended to cut the high cost of racing in Formula One. High tyre wear and high fuel consumption, pit stops were an important part of racing from the very start until Cooper arrived on the scene in the late 1950s. And there were some exciting pit stops too. Because the mid-mounted Coopers were easy on tyres, they made pit stops for tyre changing redundant. 3 other rule changes happened at this time. Races were shortened to 300 kilometres, drivers weren't allowed to change cars, and the 1.5-litre formula meant cars weren't powerful enough to wear out their tyres or use too much fuel. All these factors meant that regular pit stops, except in emergencies, were a thing of the past. Brabham reintroduced pit stops in the 1980s, running a lighter fuel strategy. These days, to generate some actual passing in the pit lane, if not on the track, stops for fuel and tyres have been made mandatory. For the pit crew, that means getting it right in the pits can win the race for your driver. Equally, getting it wrong can cost your driver the race. Each crew member has an earpiece to listen to the driver and engineers for their cues or for instructions.
The engineer calls the driver. Then I prime all the pit stop crew to be ready for that stop.
We get another one at 20 seconds when the tyre blankets come off. and then 20 seconds from then, that's when it all happens. I'll be standing out in the pit road with a lollipop, making sure the driver can see where he's going to stop. If they get it right, you'll find that the gunmen have already hooked up their sockets in the wheel gun before the cars even stop.
As the car comes in, the guy to my right grabs the wheel as the car stops. I go in with a gun, take the nut off. He pulls the wheel off straight away. It happens quite smoothly. You're coming off with a gun as the wheel's coming off. And then as soon as that's out of the way, the guy on the left-hand side puts the wheel on and you're straight back in there with a gun.
When you get a really good stop, it's as though there's only one wheel gun going, and they all seem to do it at exactly the same time. And you don't notice any time delay, and that's when you know whether it's been a good stop or not.
A couple that are sort of like just over 3 seconds, a couple just under 3 seconds.
Plug the nozzle into the side of the car as fast as possible. You open the nozzle in 2 stages. The first stage is a vent, and then the fuel starts flowing. When the fuel's flowing, we get a green light, and when the fuel stops, you just wait for the red light to come on. The red light comes on, and it's get off the car as fast as possible.
As soon as he's off, I'm sure there's nothing else in the way. I will raise the lollipop, and the driver, hopefully, just pulls away.
Just how different are the cars of today from those of the past? The Lotus 72 set the pattern for Formula One cars from 1970 onwards, with its side-mounted radiators and wedged shape. For such a daredevil driver, Jacques Villeneuve was cautious when he drove one of the classic racing cars. The driver is unprotected in the aluminium monocoque Lotus compared to the carbon fibre BAR. The engines are the same capacity, 3 litres, but the Honda V10 produces twice as much power as the V8 DFV, from less weight. Jacques is only a year older than this car.
Hey, the steering doesn't come off? I'm used to being in a car where you know you're safe. You can push to the limit, you can make a mistake and walk out of it, where with these cars, you push the limit and make a mistake, there's a good chance you won't walk out of it. And the problem is once I sit in a car, then I wouldn't be thinking about it and I would still go to the limit, so it's better to avoid it.
Of evolution at the sharp end of racing development makes for a world of difference. When Ferrari turn up, it's on a far larger scale than even the best prepared teams of the 1950s. Stirling Moss tests his Rob Walker Cooper at Silverstone before the start of the 1959 season. Relentless testing is an integral part of Grand Prix racing these days. Ferrari has the biggest budget and the biggest number of direct staff at over 700. The well-resourced teams have the ability to develop the car from race to race, adding upgraded components. They're tested first, whether it's an engine modification, transmission improvement or a new aerodynamic tweak, and then added to the racing cars. Ferrari has a small test track at Fiorano next to the factory, which was opened in 1972. They also own the larger Mugello track, so they can test away from prying eyes within the limitations imposed by the FIA. Ferrari has the ability to test on their own doorstep and make modifications very quickly. As long as there's an interest in racing, there will be clever people trying to extract as much performance as possible from their cars. In time, today's heroes will retire and be consigned to the record books and the video libraries. New names will emerge and new legends will be created as motorsport continues its race through time.